The ballroom glittered beneath the 1,000 golden candles, their reflections dancing across mirrored walls and crystal glasses. Laughter rippled like a melody, weaving through the air that smelled faintly of roses and wealth. Every woman wore silk, every man wore pride, and every eye, it seemed, turned when he entered. The Duke of Ravensshire. His name alone stirred whispers in London's finest halls. Men envied his fortune, women dreamed of his favor, and yet, the man himself rarely smiled. Tonight, he stood tall among the throng, his dark gaze sweeping the room with quiet command. But his eyes weren't searching for admiration, they were searching for her. Across the ballroom, near the grand staircase, stood Lady Evelyn Ashford. For years, she had been invisible to the glittering world around her, a ghost of the woman she used to be. The pale silk of her gown flowed softly around her fragile frame, but no fabric could hide the sorrow in her eyes. Those eyes had once held light, laughter, and dreams, before love had ruined her. Everyone knew her story. Once, she had been engaged to Lord Henry Beaumont, London's golden gentleman, heir to fortune and charm. Their betrothal had been the event of the season. But 3 weeks before their wedding, Henry had broken it off and married her cousin instead, a betrayal so cruel, so public, that Evelyn's name had become synonymous with heartbreak. She had disappeared for years after that. Rumor had it she had gone abroad, to Italy, to France, to anywhere that wasn't England. But now, she was back, thinner, quieter, her laughter gone, replaced with a silence that unsettled even the boldest of tongues. The music swelled, and Evelyn lifted her glass, her fingers trembling. She told herself she didn't care, that she had buried the past along with every foolish dream of love. And yet, every time she stepped into a ballroom, every time she heard the rustle of silk and the low hum of gossip, she could still hear it, his laughter, the echo of promises he never kept. Lady Ashford, a voice murmured from behind her. Deep, steady, unmistakable. Evelyn froze. Slowly, she turned. The Duke of Ravensshire stood there, tall, composed, his expression unreadable. His presence alone seemed to quiet the space around them. His dark hair framed a face both severe and beautiful, his jaw set with the weight of years. "Your Grace," she replied softly, dipping her head. He inclined his in return, his gaze steady on hers. "It has been some time since you last attended a Ravensshire gathering." Her lips curved faintly. "Years, I believe. Too many," he said simply. His tone was not flirtatious, it was something deeper, a quiet recognition of pain. Evelyn's breath caught. Few people dared speak to her without pity or curiosity. The Duke's voice carried neither. "Do you dance any more, Lady Evelyn?" he asked, offering his hand. Her heart stumbled. "I do not think anyone would wish to dance with me, Your Grace." The corner of his mouth lifted, just barely. "Then they are fools." And before she could protest, he took her hand, firm, warm, and steady, and led her to the center of the floor. The orchestra hesitated only a second before striking a new waltz. Conversations hushed, heads turned, the whispers began at once, the Duke of Ravensshire and Lady Ashford. It was unthinkable, he could have any debutante, any beauty in the room, and yet he had chosen her, the woman society had cast aside. Evelyn's pulse raced as they began to move. She had forgotten the rhythm of dance, the intimacy of it. His hand rested at her waist, his gaze never leaving her face. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, unable to look up. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Because you look as though you've forgotten how to be seen." Her eyes glistened. "I do not wish to be seen." He studied her in silence for a moment, his voice low when he spoke again. "Then perhaps you wish to be remembered." Her throat tightened. For years, she had tried to erase herself from every story told in London. But somehow, standing before the Duke, she felt the faintest stirring of the woman she once was, the one who had believed love could be beautiful. The waltz ended. Applause filled the hall. The Duke bowed slightly, his gaze locked with hers. But then, something shifted. A voice, sharp and cold, pierced the music. Lady Evelyn Ashford called a woman near the edge of the floor, none other than Lady Margaret Beaumont, her cousin, Henry's wife. "How marvelous to see you dancing again. I did not think the poor dear remembered how." Laughter fluttered across the room like poisoned butterflies. Evelyn stiffened. The old pain flared, searing and raw. Before she could retreat, the Duke straightened. His expression hardened, his voice carrying effortlessly across the ballroom. "Indeed," he said coolly. "It takes great strength to stand where others would have fallen. I admire it more than I can say." The laughter died instantly. Lady Margaret's smile faltered. The Duke turned back to Evelyn. "Do not let ghosts dictate your steps, Lady Evelyn. The world may look, but they cannot judge what they do not understand." Her breath trembled. For a moment, the ballroom blurred. She had imagined so many cruel whispers, so many stares, but not this. Not someone defending her. Later that evening, she found herself standing alone on the balcony, moonlight touching her pale skin. The night air was cool, scented with lavender. She pressed her hands to the marble rail, trying to steady her heart. She had danced with the Duke of Ravensshire, the most desired man in all of England. But more than that, he had seen her. "Do you always run away when people are kind to you?" The voice again, deep, calm, familiar. She turned. He stood in the shadows, his expression softened by the moonlight. "I thought you had returned to your admirers," she said quietly. He smiled faintly. "They bore me." She laughed softly, the first real laugh in years. "Then you must be easily bored." "On the contrary," he said, stepping closer. "It takes a rare soul to hold my attention." Silence stretched between them, thick with something neither dared name. "Why me?" she asked finally, her voice breaking. "Why now? You could have chosen anyone." He paused. His eyes darkened with something fierce and unguarded. "Because," he said quietly, "I have watched you grieve for years. At every gathering, every season, even when you weren't here. You lived like a ghost, Evelyn. But I remembered you. I remembered the girl who used to laugh in gardens and sketch wildflowers on the edge of her gloves. And I have spent years wishing you would let the world love you again." Her breath caught. "The world has not been kind. Then let it start with me." The words hung between them, fragile as glass. She turned away, her heart aching under the weight of them. "You cannot mean that," she whispered. "Can't I?" He took another step forward. "Do you think I care for their gossip? For their titles and games? They call me the most desired duke in London, and yet, not one of them has ever truly seen me either. But you," his voice lowered, "you look at me as though I'm human." Her eyes filled with tears she had long buried. He reached for her hand, slowly, reverently. "You have spent too long weeping over what was never worthy of you. Let me show you what love can be, not whispered behind fans or written in empty vows, but real. Public, unashamed." Her tears slipped, free, and then, before she could speak, before she could even breathe, he did the unthinkable. He turned back toward the ballroom doors, still open, the guests visible beyond them. The music had softened, the murmur of conversation low and curious. And in front of everyone, the very society that had scorned her, the Duke of Ravensshire took her trembling hand in his and pressed it to his chest. Every head turned, every whisper stopped. "Let them see," he said softly, loud enough for all to hear. "Let them see that I would choose her, 1,000 times, in every room, before every soul who dares to look." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A fan clattered to the floor. Even Lady Margaret went pale. Evelyn could barely stand. "Your Grace," she began, her voice trembling. He looked at her, eyes fierce with something like devotion. "You have lived too long in the shadow of betrayal, Evelyn. Let me be the one who stands beside you in the light." The crowd watched in stunned silence. Evelyn's heart pounded. Years of loneliness, humiliation, and heartbreak washed through her all at once. The tears she had hidden for so long returned, but these were not the same tears she had once wept in secret chambers and sleepless nights. These were tears of being seen. Tears of being chosen. The Duke didn't move. He waited, silently, patiently, as though the world itself held its breath. And for the first time in years, Evelyn Ashford did not hide her face. She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering in the light. The world faded around her. The music rose again, softly, a waltz, tender and slow. The Duke extended his hand once more. This time, she did not hesitate. Her fingers slipped into his, her pulse steadying against his touch. The crowd parted as they stepped onto the floor again, but the moment was no longer scandalous, no longer whispered behind painted fans. It was something else entirely, the quiet undoing of years of grief, witnessed by all, envied by many, understood by none. As they danced beneath the chandeliers, Evelyn's tears shimmered like diamonds against her cheeks. And though she did not yet know what the future would hold, whether this was the beginning of something or merely a dream spun by moonlight, she knew one thing for certain. She would never cry for the same reason again. The Duke's hand pressed gently against her back, his voice a whisper only she could hear. "Breathe, Evelyn. The past has taken enough from you. Tonight, let it end." And in that crowded room, beneath 1,000 watchful eyes, Lady Evelyn Ashford, the woman who had once been broken, lifted her chin, closed her eyes, and let the Duke of Ravensshire lead her into something terrifying and new. Something that felt a little like hope. The world did not forget that night. By morning, every drawing room in London hummed with one name, Lady Evelyn Ashford. Servants whispered it across corridors, duchesses spoke it behind lace gloves, and editors inked it into their scandal sheets with delight. The Duke of Ravensshire, the most desired, most untouchable man in the kingdom, had publicly offered his heart to the woman everyone believed broken beyond repair. Some called it madness, others called it mercy, but Evelyn knew better. It had not been mercy that shone in the Duke's eyes that night, it had been something far more dangerous. She had barely slept, her body trembled with the echoes of the waltz, her fingers remembering the weight of his hand. Her heart, traitorous, foolish thing, beat to a rhythm she had sworn she would never feel again. By morning light, her maid found her standing by the window, still in her gown from the night before, her hair unpinned, her eyes distant. "My lady," the maid whispered. "Carefully, you should rest. The tongue will be relentless today." "I know," Evelyn said softly. "They always are." But even as she said it, she felt a flicker of something foreign, not fear, not shame, but quiet strength. By midday, her name appeared in every whisper. "The Duke has lost his senses," said one countess. Or perhaps, another replied, "he simply sees something we do not." When evening came, a letter arrived at her door. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate, the Duke's. "Lady Evelyn, meet me at Ravensshire Gardens at dusk. There is something I wish to tell you, away from the noise of the world." Her heart stumbled over the letters. By the time the sun dipped low, she found herself walking the path to Ravensshire Gardens, a place once alive with summer parties and laughter. Now, it was quiet, draped in twilight and the soft hum of night. The scent of roses hung in the air, heavy and sweet. He stood by the fountain, tall, composed, his coat dark against the pale marble. "You came," he said, turning as she approached. "You asked," she replied simply. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Do you regret it, what I did?" Her eyes flickered away. "You humiliated yourself for me." "Humiliated?" His brow furrowed. "Is that what you think love is?" She froze. The word felt too large, too dangerous to exist between them. "Do not say that," she whispered. "You cannot mean it." He stepped closer, his voice low, steady. "I do not speak lightly, Evelyn. I meant every word I said last night. I would choose you in every room, before every soul." Her throat tightened. "You do not know me. Not truly. I have watched you," he said, his tone quiet but fierce. "I have watched you walk through rooms filled with people who forgot compassion. I have seen how you look at the world, how you hold your pain and still find grace. Do you think I could ignore that?" She turned away, her breath unsteady. "I have nothing left to offer. No fortune, no name untarnished. I am but a memory of scandal." He moved closer until she could feel his breath against her temple. "Then let me build something new with you. Something that is ours." Her tears shimmered, unfallen. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you risk your name, your standing, for me?" "Because," he said softly, "for all my titles, all my power, I have never found peace. Until I looked at you." She turned to him then, her heart breaking open in her chest. "You cannot mean this." He smiled faintly. "You think I am the sort of man who says things he does not mean. I think you are the sort of man who has never been told no," she said, her voice trembling. His eyes softened. "Then tell me no now, if that is truly what you wish." Silence. The garden wind whispered through the leaves, carrying the faint sound of the fountain's fall. Her lips parted, but no words came. "I thought so," he murmured. Then, to her astonishment, he bowed slightly. Not the polite inclination of a nobleman, but a gesture of reverence. "Evelyn," he said, his voice low and raw, "you owe me nothing. But if you ever tire of being haunted by the past, know that I will be waiting, not as the Duke they see, but as the man who sees you." Her breath shuddered. He turned to leave, his boots crunching softly on the gravel path. But just before he reached the gate, she found her voice. "Your Grace," she called. He stopped. She took a step forward, then another. The air between them shimmered with unspoken things. "I do not know how to love again," she said, her voice breaking. "I have forgotten how." He turned fully then, and for the first time, she saw his composure falter, the careful mask of nobility give way to something raw. Then let me remind you, he said. The words struck her like a promise. And yet, even as they hung between them, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind, brisk, purposeful. Your Grace, a voice called. It was Lord Pembroke, his friend and advisor. You are being reckless. The council demands your presence. They say your name is being dragged through the mud. The Duke's jaw tightened. Let them talk. They won't just talk, Pembroke hissed. They're threatening to remove your seat in Parliament. They say you've disgraced your title. Evelyn's eyes widened. You see, I told you. He cut her off gently, his gaze steady. I do not care. Pembroke looked between them, aghast. Do not do this, Alaric. She will ruin you. Evelyn flinched. The Duke's voice was calm, but his eyes blazed. No, Pembroke. She is the one thing that might save me. The silence that followed was deafening. Pembroke exhaled sharply, muttered a curse, and left. Evelyn turned away, tears streaking her cheeks. You mustn't do this for me. I cannot bear to be the ruin of another man. Alaric, the Duke, stepped forward, his hand lifting to touch her cheek, his thumb brushing the tears away. Do not mistake ruin for freedom, he whispered. They may strip me of titles, of honor, of everything they believe gives me power, but what is power without peace? Her breath trembled. And what am I without shame? His hand tightened on hers. A woman who survived it. He leaned closer until his forehead rested lightly against hers. You think the world will destroy us, he murmured. But the truth, Evelyn, is that they've already destroyed themselves, chasing gold and gossip while calling it grace. Her tears fell freely now, silent and slow. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. Do you trust me? Her lips parted. I don't know. Then let me earn it. He stepped back, his hand lingering for a moment before falling away. Tomorrow, he said softly. Come to Ravensshire Hall at noon. There will be others there. Let them see what I mean to do. Her heart lurched. Alaric, no, but he was already gone, his dark figure fading down the path, leaving her trembling beneath the silver moonlight. That night, she dreamt of his voice, calm, steady, filled with quiet fire. By morning, London awoke to madness. The Duke of Ravensshire had summoned half the nobility to his estate, for what purpose, no one knew. The rumors multiplied by the hour. Some said he meant to renounce his title. Others said he intended to marry her in defiance of the crown's approval. Evelyn barely remembered the carriage ride to Ravensshire Hall. Her hands trembled in her lap as she watched the countryside blur past. Every beat of her heart seemed to echo with dread, and something dangerously like hope. When she arrived, the great hall was already filled. Lords, ladies, and half the city's gossip mongers waited in glittering confusion. Then, as the clock struck noon, the Duke entered. He looked every inch the noble, tall, unflinching, his presence commanding silence. But his eyes found her instantly, and something unspoken passed between them. He stepped forward. My friends, he said, his voice steady, you gather here today expecting scandal. Perhaps you will have it. But I would rather you witness truth. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Evelyn's heart raced. The Duke turned to her. For years, he said, his voice low but carrying, this woman has been scorned by the very world that once adored her. She was wronged, humiliated, cast aside, and yet, she stands. That, to me, is nobility. That is grace. Every whisper died. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. So if it is scandal you crave, he continued, his tone like fire through silk, then take it freely, for I would rather be condemned with her than praised without her. Gasps echoed. Someone dropped their fan. Evelyn could barely breathe. He reached into his coat and drew out a simple velvet ribbon, nothing grand, nothing adorned. He held it out toward her. This belonged to my mother, he said softly. She wore it when my father first asked for her hand. I offer it to you, not as a symbol of what society demands, but of what I freely give. Her knees weakened. Evelyn, he said, his voice breaking for the first time, you may refuse me before them all, and I will not speak your name again. But if you take this ribbon, you will have my word, my name, and every breath I have left. The hall was silent, breathless, waiting. Evelyn's tears fell like rain. The world blurred around her. She could hear her heartbeat, the rustle of silks, the weight of every gaze. Her hand trembled. The Duke's eyes never wavered. And in that still, fragile moment, she reached out and touched the ribbon.